The twin sons of Kepler, 442b, cast long shadows across the wheat fields as Kale wiped sweat from his brow. 6 years on this frontier world, and he still marveled at how the binary star system painted everything in shades of amber and gold. The nearest settlement was 3 days' ride away, and galactic trade ships rarely bothered with backwater worlds like this one. He preferred the solitude. After the chaos of the war, the endless bureaucracy of the inner worlds, this quiet corner of space felt like salvation. His crops thrived in the rich soil, his livestock grazed peacefully, and the only sounds were whined through grain and the distant call of native birds. That morning started like any other. Kale was checking the irrigation lines when movement caught his eye near the property's edge. A figure stumbled between the fence posts, barely managing to stay upright. As it drew closer, he could make out distinctly non-human features, pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent in the morning light, and striking red curls that caught the sun's like burnished copper. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s by human standards, though alien physiology made such assessments difficult. Her clothes hung in tatters, and dirt caked her skin. Most striking were her eyes, golden and slitted like a cat's, but filled with a desperation that transcended species. She saw him and stopped, swaying on her feet. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the field. Then, to his amazement, she dropped to her knees in the dust. "Please," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. Standard Galactic, with only a slight accent. "Let me work. Just, please. I haven't eaten in 3 days." Kale had encountered few aliens on this world, and none in such desperate straits. Every instinct told him to be cautious, but the tremor in her voice, the way she held herself with what little dignity remained, it stirred something in him he thought he'd buried with the war. "When did you last drink water?" he asked, approaching slowly. She looked up at him with those golden eyes, surprise flickering across her features. "Yesterday morning. Maybe the day before. Time blurs when you're hungry." Without another word, Kale turned toward his house. "Come on. Food and water first. Work can wait." She followed him on unsteady legs, and he pretended not to notice when she stumbled twice on the path to his porch. The next morning, Kale woke to the sound of metal clanging against metal. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside to find Vesa already working, her pale blue hands wrapped around a hammer as she repaired a section of damaged fencing. She'd cleaned herself up, her red curls caught the early light, and though her clothes were still worn, she'd mended the worst tears. "You don't have to," he began, but she looked up with those golden eyes and shook her head. "I told you. Let me work." Her voice was stronger now, fed and rested. "This is how I repay kindness." For 3 weeks, she appeared each dawn like clockwork. She weeded the crop rows with methodical precision, hauled water buckets that should have been too heavy for her slight frame, and fixed problems he hadn't even noticed. When he tried to press payment into her hands, credits, extra food, anything, she stepped back as if he'd offered poison. "Food is enough," she said firmly. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's wages for honest work." "No." The word came out sharper than intended, and she softened it with a slight bow of her head. "Please. Just, food is enough." Evenings, she disappeared to sleep in his barn. He'd offered her the spare room, but she'd refused that too. Trust, he realized, would take time. One evening, as they sat on his porch sharing a simple meal of bread and stew, she finally spoke about her past. "My village, it was called Thyros. We grew crystals that sang in the wind." Her golden eyes grew distant. "The drought came 3 seasons ago. Our crystal gardens withered. The elders said we should seek help from the human settlements, but... Kale prompted gently. "We were taught that humans take everything and give nothing back. That your kind sees us as curiosities or cheap labor." She met his gaze directly. "I was raised to believe you were selfish creatures who cared only for profit." Kale felt a familiar weight in his chest, the same one he'd carried since the war, when he'd seen what his own species was capable of. "Some of us are," he said quietly. "But not all." "No," she agreed, surprising him. "Not all. My people scattered when the village failed. I've been walking for months, looking for somewhere to belong. Most places." She shrugged. "Most places proved the elders right. What made you stop here?" A small smile touched her lips. "You gave me water before I even asked. Food before I'd worked a single day. That's not what selfish creatures do." That night, she stayed on the porch long after he'd gone to bed, staring up at the alien constellations. When he woke the next morning, she was already in the fields, but he found a small crystal on his doorstep, clear as water, humming softly in the morning breeze. 2 months into their routine, Cale sliced his palm open on a jagged piece of metal while repairing the grain silo. He was wrapping the wound with a dirty cloth when Vesa appeared beside him, her golden eyes wide with concern. "Let me see," she said, reaching for his hand without thinking. He hesitated, then extended his palm. Her touch was surprisingly warm, her blue fingers gentle as she unwrapped his makeshift bandage. She examined the cut with careful attention, then tore a clean strip from her own shirt. "This will need proper cleaning," she murmured, her voice soft with concentration. The metal could have been contaminated. As she worked, Cale found himself studying her face, the way she bit her lower lip when focused, how her red curls fell across her forehead, the delicate pattern of freckles across her blue skin. When she looked up and caught him watching, neither of them looked away. "There," she said quietly, still holding his hand. "Better? Much better." His voice came out rougher than intended. That evening, she joined him for dinner inside the house for the first time. They talked about crop rotation, the weather patterns, the small dramas of farm life. But underneath the ordinary conversation, something had shifted. She sat closer, their knees occasionally brushing under the table. When she laughed at his stories, the sound filled the lonely spaces in his chest. "Vesa," he said as she prepared to return to the barn. "You don't have to sleep out there. The spare room has a proper bed, heat regulation, privacy." She paused at the door, her hand on the frame. I don't want to presume." "You're not presuming. You're family now." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. She turned back, those golden eyes searching his face for something, reassurance, sincerity, acceptance. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "All right. Just, give me time to gather my things." Her things fit in a single small bag. As she settled into the spare room, Cale realized how empty the house had felt before her arrival. Now it hummed with life, her quiet movements, the sound of her breathing, the knowledge that he was no longer alone. Later that night, he heard her moving around the kitchen. He found her making tea, wearing one of his old shirts over her sleeping clothes. The sight of her in his home, comfortable and settled, made his heart race. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "New place," she said with a small smile. "It will take time to feel safe." "You are safe here," he said, moving closer. "I promise you that." She looked up at him, and something passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. "I know," she whispered. "For the first time in months, I actually know." 3 weeks after Vesa moved into the house, they sat across from each other at dinner as rain drummed against the windows. She'd been quiet all day, and Cale sensed she was working up to something important. "I need to tell you something," she said finally, setting down her fork. Her golden eyes held his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You saved me. Not just from hunger, not just from homelessness. You saved my will to keep living." The words hung in the air between them. Cale reached across the table, covering her blue hand with his own. "Vesa. When I left my village, I thought I was searching for a place to belong. But I wasn't, I was searching for a reason to keep going. I'd lost my family, my home, my purpose. I was just, existing. She turned her hand palm up, intertwining their fingers. You gave me all of that back. Not by taking me in, but by seeing me as worth saving. You were always worth saving, he said quietly. From the moment you knelt in my field and asked to work instead of begging for charity, I knew you were someone special. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. I love you, Kale. I know we're different species, I know this world might never accept us, but I love you. He stood, pulling her up with him, and cupped her face in his hands. I love you too. More than I thought possible. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they broke apart, Vessa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've never, with a human, I mean, she whispered. We'll figure it out together, he said, brushing a tear from her cheek. We have all the time in the world. That night, they explored each other with tender curiosity. Her skin was softer than he'd expected, slightly cooler than human normal, and she shivered at his touch in ways that made his heart race. She traced the scars on his shoulders, remnants of the war he tried to forget, with reverent fingers. These hurt you, she said, not a question. A long time ago. Different life. I'm glad you survived, she whispered against his neck. I'm glad you made it here, to this moment. When they made love, it was with the desperate tenderness of two people who'd found home in each other. Afterward, she curled against his chest, her red curls tickling his chin. What happens now? She asked sleepily. Now we build a life together, he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Real partners. You're not working for me anymore, Vessa. You're working with me. Always. She lifted her head to look at him, those golden eyes shining with hope. Partners? Partners, he confirmed. In everything. The next morning, they planned improvements to the farm together, expanding the fields, adding a greenhouse for her crystal gardens, building a proper workshop. For the first time since leaving his village, Kale felt like he was building something that would last. 8 months after Vessa's arrival, their farm had transformed into something neither of them could have imagined alone. The field stretched farther than ever before, and behind the house, a crystalline greenhouse hummed with the songs of growing crystal gardens. Vessa had taught Kale to hear the music in the stones, while he'd shown her how to read the soil's needs and the weather's moods. They worked side by side in the morning light, Vessa's red curls catching the twin suns as she tended her crystals while Kale checked the grain. Their movements were synchronized now, each anticipating the other's needs without words. When he reached for a tool, she was already holding it out. When she stumbled over a root, his hand was there to steady her. Travelers approaching, Vessa said, shading her eyes as she looked toward the horizon. 3 of them. My people. Kale straightened, wiping his hands on his work shirt. Over the past months, other scattered refugees had occasionally found their way to the farm. Word had spread, somehow, that there was a place where aliens were welcome, where a human and one of their own had built something worth protecting. The 3 figures that approached were gaunt and desperate, much as Vessa had been. 2 adults and a child, their blue skin dulled by exhaustion and hunger. They stopped at the property line, uncertain. It's all right, Vessa called out in her native tongue, then switched to standard. You're safe here. The rest of the day passed in familiar rhythm. Food first, then rest, then the careful sharing of stories. These 3 had come from a mining colony that had collapsed, the child's parents lost to a cave-in. They'd been walking for weeks, following rumors of a place where humans and aliens worked together. Stay as long as you need, Kale told them over dinner. There's work enough for everyone, and the growing season is just beginning. The child, a girl no more than 10, stared at him with wide golden eyes. You're really human, she asked in careful standard. Really human, he confirmed with a smile. But you're nice. Vessa laughed, the sound warm and rich. Some humans are nice, little one. This one is the nicest of all. That night, as they settled the newcomers in the expanded bunkhouse they'd built for such occasions, Vesa leaned against Kale's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Taking me in that first day? Your quiet life is gone forever now." He pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair, sunshine and growing things, home and happiness. "Never. Not for a single moment. Even when strangers show up at our door every few weeks. Especially then." He tilted her chin up so he could see her face in the starlight. "You taught me that isolation isn't peace, it's just another kind of emptiness. This, what we've built together, this is what I was really searching for when I came to this world." She smiled, the expression radiant in the darkness. "I love you, Kale. Not just as my savior, but as my partner. My home. I love you too, Vesa. More than I ever thought possible." As they walked back to their house, their home, hand in hand, the crystal gardens sang softly in the night breeze. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of their guests' laughter mixed with the wind through the grain. They had found what they'd both been searching for, not just love, but purpose. Not just survival, but a life worth living. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all again, together.